So he came in the shop, asked him what was his name. He said, Martin Luther King. I said, where are you from? He said, Atlanta, Georgia. I said, what are you doing in town? He said, I'm here to preach my trial sermon to Dexter. I said, oh, that's my church. He said, good to meet you.
We're about to hear the story of the Barber and the Rev. The Barber is Nelson Malden. The Rev is the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. We'll hear a different side of King and a perspective on the civil rights struggle from its core, with stories most of you have not heard before.
I was cutting there in 1952, and King came here in 1954. The older barbers tried to look out for me because I was the youngest and I had less customers than they did. So anytime a new customer would come that they didn't know, I had a chance to catch them. At the time, most people didn't know anything about Reverend King except the member at Dexter Church. But he was just a little fella with no significance whatsoever. I just played with Reverend King, because he was so sarcastic when he first came here. All our relationships started with his sarcasm. So after I finished cutting his hair for the first time, like any new customer, you give them a mirror to see how he liked the back of his haircut. So he told me, pretty good. But when you tell a barber pretty good, that's an insult. But he came back 2 weeks later, I was busy. One of the other barbers was vacant. But he waited on me. As a matter of fact, by waiting on me, I figured that the last cut must have been pretty good. So I told him, I said, that must have been a pretty good haircut I gave you the last time. He said, you all right, which was another sarcastic statement. I said, this little cat, he ain't gonna be hard to deal with. He was very comical, So after I cut his hair 7, 8 times, I noticed he never give me a tip. So I said, I gotta use a little psychology on this fella here. I said, Rev, when you finish preaching a sermon on Sunday, and Sunday members tell you what a good sermon is, doesn't it make you feel good? He said, yes. I said, when you go to a restaurant and you have a nice meal, and the waitress give you good service, and you give her a tip, I said, don't you think that make her feel good? He said, yes. So he was very sarcastic, got out of the chair, grabbed my hand and held it real tight. He said, do you put 10 minutes into your earnings in church? I said, Rev, I'm a student at Alabama State College. I cannot afford to put 10 minutes in my earnings in church. He said, I'm the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and I can't afford to tip you either.
The barbershop in the black community is a gathering place, a place where hair is cut and stories are shared. The Malden Brothers Barbershop in Montgomery, Alabama, was literally at the center of the black community and at the heart of the struggle for racial equality that was about to explode. Over the years, Nelson Malden and Martin Luther King developed a relationship together. King called Nelson Barber, and Nelson called King Rev. They came to like each other a great deal. They shared what happened in their lives. And neither man had any idea they were about to be at the center of a civil rights struggle that would change America forever.
I asked him one day, what was the most painful experience he had? Well, the first thing he said, when the man threw an egg on him in Cicero, when we went to Chicago to lead the demonstration, some man threw an egg on me, plus the egg was rotten. And the second most frustrating thing to him, when he wrote his first book, Stride Towards Freedom, when the lady stabbed him with the knife. And so that was very painful. He said that's when he saw a white light. So I asked him, what was a white light? He said, well, before a person dies, sometimes they can see a white light. That means that you die. I said, yeah. So, I said, very serious what he was saying. You could see a light come in your eye when you approach it there.
A lot of King's support from white liberals and the black establishment diminished in the last 18 months of his life because of his opposition to the war in Vietnam and his demands for economic equality. One of those confrontations was played out in the Malden Brothers Barbershop between King and a local football coach.
He thought Lyndon Johnson was the best thing that ever happened to black people. He said, here's a Southern president, all these liberal presidents, we didn't get anything tangible from it. Now we got a voting right bill and a civil right bill from this Southern president. He said, why did you go against Lyndon Johnson foreign policy? He said, you've done more for black people. He said, plus you're the only black person in the country. You got a direct line to the White House. So why are you going to go against his administration when he having problems in Vietnam? The conversation began a little heated, so Reverend King told the football coach, he said, my concern is not American foreign policy, but human life. And so the coach told him, do you realize that you're not dealing with George Wallace now in Alabama? You're dealing with General Dynamic and General Electric. And if you don't know it, their biggest customer is American military. He said, you know what happened to Jesus? When they went in there and messed with those folks' money, they put him on the cross. So Reverend Kane's conversation was getting out of hand. My brother was getting all mad on the back chair. He was older than me, so he was getting mad. I think he finna ask the coach to lead the shot. Reverend Kane turned his back and walked out, which kind of showed disrespect to the coach. And so that's when coach pulled his finger and said, you're going to get killed.
The right wing, the FBI, and parts of our own government sought to end King's power and reputation, if not his life itself.
When he came in the shop, we saw two white men parked across the street from the barbershop, which is not common because it was in a black community, and very seldom you see a white man parked in front of the shop. And so a few months later, he came back by the barbershop. On this time, we saw two white men on this side of the street parked in front of the barbershop. So we assumed it was security. The last time he came by, we didn't see the little white boys in front of the shop. It was that time of year when we had the front door open. We had a little stoop in front of the barbershop. So my brother and Reverend King was sitting in the window. So my brother just out of the clear blue sky asked him, where was your security now? And that's when he said, the man upstairs is with me now. The last word I heard him say was now. He said, the man upstairs is with me. And that's the last time we saw him. That was in December of 1967.
Even though Martin Luther King left Montgomery in 1960, he came back frequently because Alabama was central to the movement for civil rights in America. From the Montgomery bus boycott he led in 1955, to the Birmingham Children's Crusade in 1963, to the fabled march from Selma to Montgomery. On his trips back to Montgomery, he would stay with one of his Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity brothers, who was one of his best friends, and he would always stop past the Malden brothers' barbershop to get a trim and see his old barber friend, Nelson Malden.
Reverend King left Montgomery in 1960. He moved back to Atlanta. And every time he would come back to Montgomery, he would always live with one of his fraternity friends named Richmond Smiley. And when he was assassinated, Richmond was in my chair, and the telephone rang. He said, is Richmond there? I said, he's in the chair. He said, tell him Reverend King been killed. He leaned over and I grabbed him. And that was my experience when he was assassinated.
Many of the major figures in the civil rights movement got their hair cut at the Malden brothers and lived within blocks of their shop.
We were less than half a block from Rufus Lewis. We were about a block from George Gilmore. Then we cut B.D. Lamb's hair. Then he bring all the people like Benjamin Mays, Mordecai Johnson, Howard Thurman into the barbershop. You cut Abernathy's hair. You cut Mrs. Abernathy's hair. You cut Vernon John hair. Then you got Little Richard. See, when you got Andrew Young and Jesse Jackson, they were pretty high-profile people at that time. You doing some heavy stuff.
Join us for a new story once a month for the next 9 months. From the remembrance of King's assassination to the 90th celebration of his birth. Each story shares a different side of Martin Luther King through those who knew him intimately. Like Georgia Gilmore, who lost her restaurant job for supporting the bus boycott in 1955, but fed the movement out of her kitchen through some very interesting means. Mary Fair Burks and Joanne Robinson, lost to most in history, but who launched the bus boycott that made King famous and were forced to leave Alabama. And the Reverend Robert Gratz and his wife Jean. He was the only white minister to stand with King during the bus boycott in Montgomery. Their home was firebombed, while their 9-day-old baby was asleep inside. So over the next 9 months, you can hear these and other stories as we take a deep dive into the history of civil rights in America and explore its resonance for the world today. Learn more at alabamachronicles.com.
It's still about freedom. It's still about freedom. It's still